Welcome once again to another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. You can again catch us at fourlights.fm and subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you can download a podcast. I am Bob McDonald. You can catch me on Twitter at Bob McDonald, and I am, of course, joined by my co-host Jimmy Lemke.
Hello, world of Horizon League basketball. How is the world? Pretty good in Chicago, I hear.
Pretty crazy everywhere, I'll say that. And you can catch Jimmy at PantherU.com and on Twitter at PantherU. Today we've got ourselves another guest. Just based on the occasion, we have Jesse Kramer over at from the Catch and Shoot. Probably one of the best I've seen that covers Chicago basketball. So
it's really good because I'm really happy that Jesse's been doing this, because ever since John Templin moved out to New York, I feel like Chicago has really had a void of people covering all five teams, and it's good to see somebody's actually.
Thank you guys.
Sure.
Glad to join you guys today.
Yeah. So Jesse, where can we find you online?
Well, Twitter handle is at catch_n_shoot, and the URL is thecatchandshoot.com.
All right, be sure to check that out. He covers they cover all the Chicago folks. I think you guys know where we're going with this today as a focal point. UIC is on a winning streak.
Yes.
Against all odds, yeah. Ahead of Cleveland State now in the standings.
Is that for real?
Yeah, well, they're tied, but they would have the tiebreaker in terms of like tournament seeding if it ended today. Right now, UIC would have a tiebreaker.
Welcome to my world, Jimmy.
Yeah, we may have to put Bob on suicide watch if UIC actually gets a game ahead of Cleveland next weekend.
I got enough problems. I don't have to worry about that. Race to the bottom over here. But no, legitimately, UIC has come out come out the second half of this Horizon League schedule just absolutely on fire. Obviously, you had a feeling that at some point in time UIC was eventually going to get over the hump, and it started with Cleveland State and it just rolled from there. I mean, the big win was on Thursday against Wright State, and then on Saturday. Took down Northern Kentucky, Ty Odiasi. I mean, what can you say about that kid?
Well, I think he's just starting to come into his own and get his confidence back. And I mean, Steve McLean has been going crazy about him since he took the job. He's seen that Ty can become an all-conference type of player, and his timing on the defensive end when it comes to blocking shots is as good as I've seen from anyone in college basketball this year. And again, he's only a sophomore, and he's just getting better every game, and he's just been dominating on the defensive end. No one can really get by him and get to the rim when he's in the game.
So definitely, yeah, and we've talked a lot about we've talked over the last few episodes about kind of that youth movement over there at UIC. I mean, you got Odiasi, you've got Dikembe Dixon. Can't say enough about that guy, and even Young, who's I believe a junior college transfer,
right.
If I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So you have a almost brand new crew. You throw in a new coach in Steve McLean. So
yeah, they were looking forward a lot to this 5-game homestand that they just finished up.
Not winning a Division I against a Division I game. I guess for lack of a better term, I guess Cleveland State was the slump buster.
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, they started out with 6, I think, of their first 8 conference games on the road, and they start off with Valpo, Detroit, Oakland, Green Bay, Milwaukee. So basically 5 of the top 6 teams in the league, and 3 of those games were on the road. It was just an impossible stretch for a young team, really, and they kept looking forward to this 5-game homestand as a way to turn things around, and obviously it worked out. I mean, they went 3-2 and nearly beat Youngstown State. They nearly went 4-1.
Yeah,
we knew that UIC wasn't this like total loss of a team, because frankly, like they've had some close stretches against teams that maybe aren't great teams, but are fairly decent teams. And I mean, the Illinois game is the one I'll point to. Not that Illinois is anything to shake a stick at as far as their own expectations, but UIC's had a lot of difficulties this year, but they've kept it close in some games. And having that, I kind of wish they would have gotten that one because it would have helped us for the RPI. But at the end of the day, I mean, UIC is better than their record, and it's good to see them finally start putting together some wins because they're going to need that confidence when they're heading as they head into the next season and beyond. Dikembe Dixon and Ty Odiasi are just an incredible two-piece young core. I mean, to realize that they're going to have those two guys in the middle for 2 more years is kind of incredible when you consider the recruiting class that McLean put together this year. It's not out of the realm of possibility to look at UIC and think maybe this could be a team that could challenge for the conference championship 2 years from now when Dikembe's a senior, or Dikembe's a junior and Odiasi's a senior. I mean, that would be that's a pretty formidable front just looking at those two guys. And then McLean, all he has to do is really find the pieces for guard to really, could take advantage of that, and he's ready to go. So I'm impressed by UIC. This weekend was really nice. Obviously, Wright State's at full strength. Northern Kentucky, they may be missing LaVon Holland, but they've been pretty good even without LaVon Holland. They only lost by 12 at Valpo, which equals the closest score that Valpo has given up in a victory. Obviously, Wright State beat Valpo, but every other game they've won by 12 or more. And even without
and we'll kind of talk about. And we'll kind of talk about how Wright State apparently is Valpo's kryptonite a little later on.
Yeah, I mean, good for them, but really, UIC is the news because you have a team that came in
absolutely
one win, and all of a sudden they get 2 more. The I would be really angry about it if the Horizon League were really tops in the RPI, and we had a few teams looking at large bids, but we don't. So it's whatever. Get some parity in the league. Let's make it so this conference tournament's fun. No easy outs. UIC's definitely
not anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not anymore. It doesn't look like. I mean, so that's when you look at it, you really thought about it, and now this, truth be told, I mean, this conference schedule is going to be real interesting now.
It's kind of funny because there's this conference schedule. Pretty much every team has had these long stretches of being on the road or at home. Everybody's had it, and it's just really odd because
seriously, who made the schedule this year? It's wild.
Well, the Horizon League's never been really good at scheduling. It's a really, really, really difficult job because we're always thinking along the lines of fans or writers. We're thinking of you have these 10 teams. You have to figure out how to make the schedule work for everybody, and then if you can't make it work, then if you can't make this date work because that team only had 1 day of rest and this other team had 6, that's what we're thinking of as fans. But in reality, the Horizon League has a whole lot more to contend with because a lot of these buildings are buildings that will have other things going on. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we have Panther Arena, which this month has. I mean, they've got Disney on Ice is something we have every year. They always have the circus. There's always like 4 or 5 things during the season at our arena, and then if you go across 10 buildings, I mean, there are very few that are really just for the basketball team. When you think about it, I'm thinking of specifically like Valpo's Arc and probably the Beagley Center at Youngstown State. But those are really two of the Callahan Hall. But really, other arenas, the UIC Pavilion hosts events. The Nutter Center hosts events. The Wolstein Center hosts some events. Are like I said, Panther Arena, the Resch Center up in Green Bay, BB&T Arena for Northern Kentucky. These are all event centers. So the Horizon League has to deal with making sure that they have a conference schedule that works for everybody, including not just the teams, but these events on the side. The Horizon League has to contend with the fact that our arena has a deal with Disney on Ice every year, so we have to figure out a weekend for Disney on Ice. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it ends up with this. Detroit and Oakland both played their senior days yesterday. on February 13th, they played their senior days. So it's ridiculous, but it's the best they can do. And as a Milwaukee fan, I think they could have done worse. But then again, obviously, I'm not.
This is actually
home games, and we end with 4 home games, and we didn't play any of the rivals, quote unquote rivals, during our students' break. So we were happy to not have Green Bay or Valpo during student break, and look what happened. Green Bay, we had the Green Bay game, and we had something like, I think it was something like 1,000 students were at that game. So it was pretty nice. I was happy to see that it worked out for us this year, because at Milwaukee we always have a complaint that the Horizon League almost always schedule our rivals for break, whether that was Green Bay or Butler. Whenever we had a rival game, they would always schedule it during break, and it was nice for us to get away from that. So it's kind of weird that we have these long stretches, but it worked out in our favor. So for me, I'm somewhat happy. For the rest of the conference, I understand that it's still somewhat kind of a mess, but that's the way it goes when you have a bunch of arenas that host events.
Well, the weird thing is, and this is travel aside, at least they gotten back to the whole travel partners thing. Last year, it was all kind of herky jerky the way the schedule was set up. At least now they're back to the, for example, you've got the Michigan trip, you got the Wisconsin trip. I mean, last year, there were stretches where that wasn't the case. I mean, this year you're still going to run into those things. I know Cleveland State did one game against Valpo, one game against one game against UIC, where they're completely separated and spaced out. I mean, but for the most part, it hasn't been that way, thankfully, as opposed to last year, where I really wasn't sure when or where those games were going to be, played and whatnot.
Absolutely. Something actually. Something you bring up actually makes me want to think of something. There was a discussion on the Freak message board, which is one of the UWM boards, the more prominent of the two. I can admit that, even though my board, I try and get it going. It's just the Freak board had a discussion. MU Panther is a friend of mine named Matt. He works at Marquette University's dental school, and he brought up that the Horizon League, we're back to 10 teams. And the way we used to do it for scheduling was they would do an opening weekend where the 10 teams would play 2 games, and then one set of travel partners would play their game at the beginning of December. And now that we have teams, we didn't go back to that. So now they're trying to shoehorn all 18 games into after January 1st. And it's caused some 3 games in 5 days setups where some of these teams are playing more games against teams that more games in fewer days, and it's kind of getting the schedule all herky-jerky. So going back to
or you end up with situations where you have a 6-day layoff. Like, for example, Cleveland State and Youngstown State just had that. They had a week layoff where I think Cleveland State played against they had a week layoff where they played Oakland they played Oakland, and then a week later they're not playing anybody else, and they play Youngstown State.
Yeah,
Right, and
next week,
UIC after that second Cleveland State game, they had a full week off, played Valpo, then had 5 more days off, played Wright State. Now they're playing, I think, 3 games in 6 days, something like that. So they got it too.
It's just incredible.
It's an improvement over last year, but I think we can all objectively agree it could get better.
Yeah, I think that it's easy to say let's Horizon League got to work on it when the Horizon League has to contend with certain things that we don't really think about.
Sure, absolutely.
So
now, here's my question. You mentioned all the other arenas. Is UIC Pavilion one of those places where they too have events, or is that kind of
not much? Okay. It's mainly just the men's and women's basketball teams there.
Yeah, because I know with Chicago they've got about 100 different other places to go.
Are the Chicago Sky a thing still?
What?
Is the WNBA team still in Chicago?
Oh,
the
yeah,
Sky?
Yeah, they're still around.
And they play at the Pavilion, right?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not really paying any attention to them. I'm going to look at them right now.
To be honest, I'm going to pay attention to the women's NBA team.
Yeah, no disrespect.
I'm sorry. I really stopped paying attention once the Cleveland Rockers folded. So, sorry, WNBA. I don't have a local team. That's why I don't follow Major League Soccer, because we don't have a team in Cleveland either. So,
so the Chicago Sky, they moved out to Allstate Arena by O'Hare, which is where DePaul plays.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
Arena, because now DePaul's going to be leaving there.
Yeah.
Maybe DePaul will finally get back to the level of basketball they enjoyed under Ray Meyer when they have their own gym on campus or by campus. Really, I think DePaul will finally get better, but it's good that the Allstate Arena has another team, because I think if DePaul left and they didn't have this guy, I think the arena would just have. I think the Allstate Arena would really just have the Chicago Wolves, the AHL team, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, yeah.
And that's good. Allstate Arena also does a lot of the side events. Like when WWE comes to town, they almost always go there rather than the United Center. So that's something else to point out.
There you go.
I did want to, the opening weekend thing, I wanted to say one thing on that before we moved on is if the Horizon League, I had brought this up on our message board a long time ago when we still had the travel partners. And we have this opening weekend, and we were the only conference at the time to play our first weekend that early. So we were the first conference to open conference play, in many years. And I always thought that the Horizon League missed an opportunity to kind of brand an event, call it opening weekend or something better. I'm not very creative and far that
again, with the addition of the new team, it's going to be one of those trial and error things. Maybe this is something they'll reevaluate next year, and maybe think about considering the Horizon League is trying to really start do this. They're really working on this branding kick, especially with the tournament being in Detroit and Joe Louis Arena. Maybe tie the kind of the road to Motor City Madness begins here, or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities. I'm not like you said, I'm not exactly
familiar with any of the other conferences. I don't know if anybody started playing in the early December, but we could get back to that, ease scheduling, and then brand an opening weekend.
Yeah.
I like your idea. The road to Motor City Madness begins here, because that would follow the Motor City.
Exactly. See, there you go. There you go, Horizon League. My gift to you.
I already sent that to Julie Rolach, the number 2 at the Horizon League. I wanted to. I thought that. I listened to that discussion and I was thinking, this is an opportunity for the Horizon League, and as well as ESPN, since we're on ESPN, it's an opportunity for us to create this opening weekend thing, something that's unique for us, and then also get a corporate sponsor for it. This Speedway road to the Speedway starting line, or whatever the hell we want to call it.
As long as it's not sponsored by the movie John Carter again, I don't think I could handle that.
Well, I think with Speedway is, I don't know.
Except,
Still a sponsor, but they were the sponsor of the Horizon League tournament not that long ago, and it's Motor City Madness. So let's build on the car theme.
sure, absolutely.
Why not? It's the road.
Oh, absolutely. Oh man, that would be outstanding. I mean,
Madness, brought to you by Speedway. It's such a great idea, and I'm not taking full credit for that because you set the road to Motor City Madness. So it's like just collaborative, just us thinking a little bit, and it offers the Horizon and ESPN an opportunity to sell corporate sponsorship for an event. I mean, that's a little bit of, they can put together. I mean, because ESPN3 is a thing, as much as I don't like it, it's a good thing because we can point to this and say, well, here you go. Here's the ESPN3 can put together a separate thing. They can, put it on. They can make a graphic. You put a graphics intern on that for 15 seconds to take the regular college basketball graphic they use for all the preseason stuff and add the Horizon Leagues.
Well, and remember too that during all of the ESPN3. Have some sort of Horizon League thing in there. I guess they recorded during media day and they just ran it over the course of the season. So
Absolutely.
Maybe that's maybe on top of doing that, you can start having those individuals that you have for media day.
They could definitely
be hyping that up as well.
Two things I wanted to say before we moved on that we've been kind of touching on. Number one, whatever they do, if they do decide to go with that and brand it as something, please name it something that doesn't have the website taken up, the .com. Because if you go to MotorCityMadness.com, it's like a club softball team in Detroit. It's like a bar league softball team. Or like a kickball team or something. It's can we
fast pitch softball. I just looked it up. Fast pitch softball.
Fast pitch softball
for young women.
Okay, so wait.
Area.
I think Olympia Entertainment might want to shell out some cash to kind of buy that domain name up. Just call me crazy.
If you want us to, after 5 years, go get MotorCityMadness.com. Because it's so hard. Just go to HoriZonLeague.com/MotorCityMadness. Like, really? You want me to type out that long URL? I just go to the Horizon League's website and click on the first link. It's just there should be a maybe Motor City Madness.
You're not going to get carpal tunnel typing out that whole thing, Jimmy. Come on, really?
MotorCityMadness.net. Anything. And then I wanted to point out one thing about travel partners. We actually are closer travel partners now than we were when it was Loyola and Butler. Because UIC is actually really closer to Valpo as far as driving time. And Wright State is much closer to Northern Kentucky than they were to Detroit, because they were Detroit's travel partner for so long, obviously.
I forgot about that.
Detroit now has Oakland, which is only, a few miles apart. And then, Cleveland and Youngstown stay the same. And Milwaukee and Green Bay, we're actually the most distant travel partners from each other in the Horizon League now at 2 hours apart. It's kind of incredible, and it's kind of cool that the Horizon League was able to get a 10-team setup that was so geographically good for each other. Although at this point, I'm still kind of annoyed with being too big of a conference and having too many what I would call gong programs. But it is what it is. So I'm really happy with it, and I'm really happy that UIC has been able to switch it around and, finally figure out how to put together a good week.
Yeah, It's absolutely amazing. So, so I did want to talk about. Obviously, I did want to talk about the Wright State win at Valpo. I really thought this was going to be one of those tough out, especially when Wright State loses to UIC the game before. So it's kind of an issue as it relates to that. And then they turn around and they were pretty much were dominant for most of the game. And then I mean, how does that work?
If you had asked me who would win yesterday, Northern Kentucky or Valpo, or excuse me, Northern Kentucky or Wright State, or excuse me, UIC or Wright State, I would have taken, UIC or Valpo. I don't know what I'm trying to say. If you had asked me to preview yesterday's games, I would not have predicted UIC to beat Northern Kentucky, and I would not have predicted Valpo to lose to Wright State. So it just goes to show that this conference, anybody can win on any given day. And maybe Wright State is somewhat of Valpo's kryptonite, but now everybody can say, well, Wright State could be Valpo's kryptonite. So that makes the conference all the more interesting.
Oh, what's ironic, of course, is that if you look at the conference standings, there may not be a possibility for Valpo to even play Wright State at this point in the tournament. So it's kind of a weird thing how that's kind of set up.
Yeah.
I think what's kind of interesting is, I doubt that Wright State would make up 2 games this late in the season and actually tie Valpo, but they do have a much easier finish than Valpo, so it's not out of the question with the season sweep, because they both have to play Oakland at home, but then Valpo finishes at Milwaukee and at Green Bay, and after Oakland, Wright State has Northern Kentucky, Youngstown State, and Cleveland State. So I would expect Wright State to get to at least 13 wins. And we'll see what would happen with Valpo with that tougher finish. I would still expect Valpo to get the number 1 seed and win the conference outright even. But it definitely it opens up a little bit of at least a potential for a more exciting finish for the regular season title.
I think Valpo will win one more game in the Horizon League regular season. I just don't know where it comes. They've had problems beating us here in past years, although not recently, and Green Bay has been harder for them to win at, and although Green Bay is a totally different team than they were. So there's opportunity for Wright State. If Valpo loses too, they could definitely. We could definitely see a Wright State as the 1 seed, Valpo as the 2. It just looks like it's totally shaking out where Wright State's going to be that 2 seed.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's unless something, like you said, unless something completely wacky happens, which between 2 through 7 right now, anything is possible. It looks like.
So at the bottom, we're really looking at UIC and Cleveland, really fighting for that 9th spot.
Yes.
Yeah, and Youngstown State could also fall there, maybe. They're only 1 game up now on those 2.
And the only way that's going to happen is if,
well, Cleveland could beat Youngstown, and that would really pop Youngstown into the lower bracket. But
Cleveland already beat Youngstown yesterday.
As a team that's likely to finish in that 3 to 6 spot, the 3 to 6 spot where we'll have what would have been a home game in previous tournaments. As a team that was probably going to have that, I would say that I'm not very excited about playing any of those teams in the first round of the Horizon League tournament, even UIC. Because if we beat UIC here in Milwaukee, in a couple weeks, you know how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in 1 year? It is incredibly difficult. It doesn't happen very often. It's so hard to do because your players have beaten them, but they don't know what the other team is going to do to win. So it's very difficult. Sometimes players will get a little bit. They'll be a little bit. I don't want to say complacent, but yeah, actually I'll say that they'll be complacent because they think that they'll easily beat those guys. So it's a it's a difficult thing to beat a team 3 times in a year, and that also applies if Wright State plays Valpo in a title game or a semifinal scenario. Wright State's going to have one hell of a time beating a really good team 3 times in 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially this year, the way the Horizon League is shaking out.
So, what are we looking at for UIC for the rest of the year on their schedule?
They've got Youngstown and Detroit coming up, so 2 more games that they will have a chance in, and then they finish Oakland at home, and then Green Bay and Milwaukee on the road. So 3 tough ones to end it. But next 2 games, we could see them get 1 or 2 more wins here, even.
Huh.
Yeah. I think, that Youngstown State game is definitely going to be winnable, especially if it's at home at UIC Pavilion.
It's on the road. It's at Youngstown State.
Oh. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, it's gonna be tougher.
Actually, it's the Beagley Center. The Beagley Center is actually that's like reverse home field advantage over there. So UIC might actually have a shot. Because we were having a discussion. Well, last night we were having a discussion about this, about Cleveland State, because Cleveland State was able to beat Youngstown State on the road. And they were really able to. It was the final score was not as close as the game was not as close as the final score had indicated. You have the patented Cleveland State scoring drought right at the beginning of the second half, but it was one of those occasions where, unlike every other game that they've ever lost, they were able to weather the storm and kind of triumph. So thanks to again, it seems like when I don't know what it is about the Beagley Center for Youngstown State that it's that they've suffered some really bad losses over the years at their home facility. And I don't really understand that at all.
It's always just against the bigger teams. They'll have squeak a big one out. All of a sudden, Youngstown beats Butler in Butler's second national runner-up year at the Beagley Center.
Yeah.
But I don't.
It's kind of a herky. It's kind of a weird thing for the. Yeah, they do have those outliers, but then this year they just completely blow them out at home. So I mean.
Just speaking of home court advantage, I think it's kind of crazy. I'm just looking at the Horizon League's KenPom page right now, and home teams have only won 53% of their home games in the Horizon League this year.
Yeah.
It's basically just no home court advantage anymore. It's insane.
Yeah. That is
sections. That's the long and short of it. Is that Oakland has a good student section, but for some reason Oakland can't figure out how to win at home against everyone. They just keep losing at home.
Yeah.
But the rest
Which is, again, the opposite was true last year when you had that problem. It's like, where basically everybody held serve at home last year. This year it's basically every man for himself. It's so crazy how that worked.
We all play in relatively sterile conditions. Every team doesn't have. There's no team that has a crazy home court advantage. Oakland should
this year
does, but they don't, and that's not because Oakland is a bad team. It's because they just, for some reason, they can't figure out how to win against their other teams. Oakland's problem right now. I don't know. But their student section comes out. Everybody else, no, that's not the case. Valpo comes out, but there's not a lot of students to begin with. So Valpo, I've always been kind of a connoisseur of student sections because I think I ran ours for 4 years, and then I ran ours for a long time. And Northern Kentucky really showed up for the game against us last Saturday, but that was because it was their homecoming game. They sold out the Lower Bowl. I don't know what it was really about, but I know that most of the time we don't have a home match. A lot of good show up for our Green Bay game, but that was because it was a rivalry game, one of the first games back from break. So I don't think that we had this like incredible advantage. And honestly, like we're not the only one. Green Bay students don't show up. Green Bay students don't show up. Detroit students don't show up. Cleveland students, I'm not even sure they exist. Youngstown students are waiting for football season.
UIC students don't really show up either much.
And UIC's tried. That's my dog. Sorry, guys. My dog decided to bark because there's people coming in. It's a...
Jesus, is everybody having dog problems today?
It's not really a thing for me. I don't know. My dog, he's kind of a jerk. He's kind of he's an ass because he really doesn't like. He loves, but he wants to like be a Mr. Tough Guy when when people come in the door. So we have some friends coming over. He's just being himself. So sorry to everybody listening, but Apollo is a jerk. So that's just a given.
Well, now I don't feel as bad. Thanks. Because
must have a great suit.
I had to mute. I literally 30 seconds ago had to mute my microphone so my dogs would stop fighting. So there we go again. So, but yeah, the moving forward, and this is the one other thing I wanted to talk about is the this is actually again this is kind of relates to kind of the new the freshmen that are in the league. I mean, we've talked about Dixon a lot. We've talked about on my end we've talked about Rob Edwards. You've got Jared Andrews over at Youngstown. You've got McFauley up in Detroit. You've got Drew McDonald down in Northern Kentucky. When we look at this season as a whole, especially during the conference season, who do you think is going to end up being that freshman of the year? At this point in time, it's looking like Dikembe Dixon.
Is there any doubt?
I think it has to be Dixon right now.
Yeah.
He's been asked to do so much for UIC. He has the ball in his hands every possession, and he's even been running some point guard recently.
Is he really?
Really?
Yeah, because before it was Paris Burns who was their point guard, and then Lance Whitaker was the backup point guard, but then Burns left the program. So now Whitaker has been starting at point guard, and Dixon, at a few possessions a game, will bring up the ball off the court and set up the offense. He just has the ball in his hands so much. That's why when he has games with 5-6 turnovers, which he's done several times, I don't blame him at all because he's a freshman. Everyone's double teaming him. And he just has the ball in his hands, and you can't really ask much more from him in those situations.
Freshmen are going to make mistakes, so I think the 5 or 6
yeah,
shooting 50%. I mean, he's got 20 points and 15 rebounds. It's just, I'll take it. I'll take the turnovers with the other stuff.
Yeah. Especially with that. I mean, and he's really got that inside out game that a lot of he can go to the inside, he can go to the outside. He's got that versatility that you don't even see a lot out of the upperclassmen, let alone a freshman like Dixon.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the more versatile guys that I've seen as a freshman at a mid-major school like this. I mean, the way, like you said, he can go inside and out, he can defend, he can shoot, he can finish at the rim. And, I mean, you'd expect that of an upperclassman maybe, but not from a freshman usually.
We usually don't see that kind of skill in a big man as a freshman in the HoriZone League. I think I could probably name off on one hand the amount of guys who have been post players in this conference who have come in with as much or more skill than Dixon. We don't have to list them all. Obviously start with Matt Howard. Go out from there. But it's just it's such a big deal for a program like UIC when you have a brand new coach and he needs to really build a program, it's so important to be able to build around a piece like that, because Steve McLean can go to JUCOs and he can say, look, you can spend the next 2 years here and we may actually be something. Even though they only have, 5 wins, 3 of them Division I, Steve McLean can say, look, point guard, you come here and you're going to have guaranteed 7 assists just by passing the ball to this guy and letting him do his thing. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big deal in recruiting to have a freshman that is so good, and for Odiasi to be a sophomore. I mean, McLean probably has the easiest job recruiting guards in the conference. As far as other freshmen are concerned, I'm not very impressed by McDonald at Northern Kentucky. He throws a lot of elbows that he doesn't get called for, and
we've talked about that a couple of times.
Sometimes it's because they're really soft elbows, but he does throw them. He throws them on like just about every possession. So I don't know if like the refs are just tired of calling it every time or what. But McDonald just like it's almost like he just rips it's the rip they teach you in football when you need to change directions really fast. They teach you to throw, like if you take your right arm, you push it all the way to the left, and then you rip your elbow around, and that helps you get momentum and turning and running. And McDonald does that when he's posting up players. It's like, this kid's throwing elbows, just call it. And they're not, and it's whatever. I mean, Dixon doesn't do that. Dixon's too talented to have to rely on something like that. So, freshman of the year, perhaps even newcomer of the year, I think it's just shoo-in for freshmen for sure.
Yeah, I don't think we do newcomer anymore.
Do we not?
I think I got rid of that. No, I think we have like an all new. I don't remember how we do it anymore, but I know we do not have the newcomer of the year anymore. And I remember this because for a couple of years ago, I made the case of John Harris being newcomer of the year, but he was a senior transfer, so obviously that wasn't happening because they had switched it back to fresh. I don't know what happened. Maybe they got so many different transfers in over the last few years. They were like, you know what, we got to get in because you've had some really, really, really talented transfers come in that could technically be called newcomers. Like on the Cleveland State end, you had John Harris, you had Cedric Jackson, you had Trey Lewis, all transfers, all newcomers at one point in time. You had so I don't know. It's probably why they decided to just stick with freshmen, I guess. I don't know.
I think of Paul Carter at UIC.
Yeah.
Coming from Minnesota, played that 1 year. Big deal.
So yeah,
I think you bring up something that should be talked about, and I think that the Horizon League should definitely consider it. I think that it's time that the Horizon League moves beyond what we have for all conference.
Mm-hmm.
We do the all conference team, first team, second team, a defensive team, and an all freshman team. And I think it's time that we move on and add a third team all conference.
Oh.
Because I believe that there's a lot of talent on the third team, a lot of talent at the third team level that this conference didn't have 10 years ago.
Okay.
We've kind of made it where the all defensive team has become kind of like a de facto third team, and there have been some really bad defensive players make the all defensive team. And I don't know why. And I really think it's just because we don't have a third team. We do all conference first team and second team, and then there's no third team, so there's no, there'll be a guy who may be averaging 13, 14 points and 3 rebounds or 4 rebounds, and he won't get an all conference selection. So they'll make him all defensive team, even if he's not even a good defensive player. For every Dante from Oakland or Ryan Allen from Milwaukee a few years ago, or really strong defensive players, for every one of those guys, there's like 3 or 4 guys named to the all defensive team that are not defensive players. They're just players that got left off the second team. So I think it's time the Horizon League adds a third team. I get that from one of our fans, Paul Spacuzza, who knows more about Milwaukee Panthers basketball than anybody in the history of the world. He knows as much or more than everybody. Maybe our former SID, Kevin O'Connor, would go, go Horizon League. And, so Paul Spacuzza has been railing about that for years, and I think it's time because I think there's going to be guys that will be left off the all-conference team. I think a guy like Carrington Love might not even make second team, and that would be ridiculous because the guy scores a ton, and he forces a lot of steals. Maybe not him specifically, maybe it's somebody else, but I know that there's pretty solid candidates for all of these things across the board. Dikembe Dixon might be left off the all-conference team off the first or second team for the post players because we can stick him on the all-freshman team. He doesn't need to be at all first or second team conference because he's on the newcomer team. That's a problem because he's good enough to be all-conference. You don't have to make it so he's just all-freshman team because he's good enough to be over here. So I think that the Horizon League should definitely consider moving up to adding a third team. A lot of conferences have them. The Big East has it. The Big Ten has it. All conference third team. So I think it's time that we start getting on board with that.
I'm just curious, who would you guys put on your first team right now along with Felder and Peters? Those must be the two obvious ones, but how would you fill that out?
It's so hard. It's so hard because obviously I'm going to have bias. So I don't know because I know I can't put two Milwaukee players on the first team.
I would actually put Cameron Morse from Youngstown on there.
What's he?
I see a good argument for him.
He's averaging around 20 points and shooting really well.
Chris Jenkins from Detroit, possibility as well.
Yeah, we learned that yesterday.
Yes, you did.
If you had to put one Milwaukee player, would you take Tybee or Johnson for the first team?
It's so hard. Because Tybee's leading the conference in rebounds, George Johnson's second in the country in assists. It's like, what? Like, who do you pick out of that?
Yeah.
And Tybee won us that game at Oakland, but Johnson has the ball in his hands so damn much. I mean, it's just he turns the ball over a lot less than Felder. So despite the fact that both of them have the ball in their hands almost the entire time. So I think I would say Johnson, as much as Tybee I feel deserves to be all conference. It's just hard to say that Jordan Johnson wouldn't be more deserving if I had to pick between the two. I think I would make it Jordan Johnson. It's so hard because at Green Bay.
Yeah, because you make an argument about a lot of guys. Green Bay, you can make an argument for Jordan Faust. Oakland, in addition to Kay Felder, you can make it.
Yeah, it's every team. With Green Bay, it's not just Faust. Carrington Love is leading the conference in assists, or he's number one or two in assists, and he's scoring 16 plus a game. Like you were saying at Oakland, you've got Felder, but you've also got
Jalen Hayes.
Down in Northern Kentucky, Jalen Billups.
And Cole Query.
Cole Murray, yeah, absolutely. And we haven't even talked about Wright State. Wright State, who might have 3 or 4 guys that are all conference worthy, and none of them might get picked because none of them have the numbers.
Yeah.
In comparison to some other players, but they're all conference worthy. So that's what I'm saying. There's so many players. It's not that we have, a few good players on each team, so let's make sure everybody gets a role. There are so many good players in this conference that are worthy of it that we just have to expand. It wasn't that long ago where if you averaged 13 points a game, you were an all-conference player because there just weren't that many players that did it.
That's true.
And now players average 13 points a game. A lot. We have a lot of players that do that. And maybe I wouldn't make all of them all-conference, but there's definitely a case that there's at least 15 guys that deserve to be called all-conference. And it's just a matter of making it so the HoriZone League says, okay, let's do it. And then, yeah, obviously the teams would be for it because that's another thing you can sell for recruiting and stuff. You know, hey, you can come play with an all-conference player who was third team all-conference, but he was all-conference.
That's true.
It's something we need. It's something we need to do. It's something we should have done a long time ago, and I'm ready to have it. You know, Tavon Walker should be, you know, on their all-conference team, and he might get left out, and that would be ridiculous. Like, he's just so worthy of it. You could pick 2 players from every team, just about.
Just about.
I think I would just go with Dikembe Dixon from UIC. I think I could just go. I mean, from Youngstown, I would probably just go with Morse. And
yeah,
might have been if Bobby Hayne didn't get hurt, but.
Yeah, I think the only one from Cleveland State you can make an argument for is Rob Edwards, maybe DeMonte Flanagan, maybe, and it's only because he's been playing his butt off the last few games.
We just need it. We need to recognize that the level of the talent in the conference is getting better. So why not just do it?
There you go.
17th but the talent at the top of the conference, the talented players at or near the top, it's not that like the best players are so much better than before. I just think there's more players. There's no Norris in this league right now. There's no Matt Howard. There's no Gordon Hayward, but we have more of these players. And Alec Peters and Kay Feller are pretty damn. They are pretty damn.
Of course they are. So.
As a junior, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Of course. So, all right. Well, I think we can go. I think that will be the point where we can go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you again, Jesse Kramer.
Absolutely.
For coming on in. Thecatchandshoot.com is where we can find you. So we'll definitely be checking that out. Definitely be checking that out for everything, all things Chicago basketball, and for particularly our purposes, UIC.
Hey Jesse, I do have a question that I could talk about you for a second. Are you a senior at Northwestern right now?
I'm a junior.
You're a junior.
Yeah.
Are you a journalism student?
I am.
Are you going to go on to Medill?
What's that?
Are you going to go on to Medill?
Well, I'm in Medill right now for the undergrad.
Is Medill like an undergrad thing too?
Yeah. It's an undergrad and grad, so I'm in it right now for the undergrad program.
Grad school?
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Not sure yet what I'm going to plan on doing.
Good luck to you in your schooling, and I'm really looking forward to reading Catch and Shoot for the rest of the year.
All right, thanks. I really appreciate that.
Sure, no problem. All right, and again, you can catch us on fourlights.fm. Always, again, subscribe. We'll be back again with you next week.